Excellent. Then let's get to it, and everybody else I think can catch up because we've talked about the topic online so much that I think I welcome you all to the panel about how embedded finance, embedded banking can improve the financial services for SMEs. As you know, maybe from the posts and websites from Aperture and Swan and All21, that this panel was actually inspired by a paper we co-authored with Swan together, but it's also inspired by the work we've been doing together with All21. And that's why today I'm joined by Florent, the Chief Commercial Officer of Swan, and Prit, the CEO of All21. Both are embedded finance service providers who basically build their business model on delivering a better banking service to SMEs. And that's how I would hand over for a quick introduction to you. Florent, feel free to take the lead.
Okay, so indeed, I'm Florent Tardivel. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at Swan that I joined 2.5 years ago. So maybe to introduce Swan, we make it possible for any company to create banking accounts for their clients and to issue MasterCard cards with their own logo printed on it. So we provide this in a white label fashion. And with us, essentially, any company with a few developers can use our APIs and then become a fintech. There is a buzzword to call this. It's embedded finance or embedded banking. And we pride ourselves to have unlocked this embedded market in Europe because we built something very easy to use, probably the fastest solution to implement. We officially launched 3 years ago in 2021. And today we have a little more than 100 partners throughout Europe. So we call the companies who embed our product our partners and their customers and customers. I will refer to this terminology later on. And I think what we are the most proud of is our capability to project ourselves throughout Europe. We have now 15 partners live in 15 countries throughout Europe. And we have become the leading embedded banking solution in Europe.
Thank you so much, Florent. And then Prit, same intro from you.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Alex, for having me as well. So I'm Prit, I'm the CEO of All21. I've been with the company around 3 years now. I've been a supporter of the company since inception, actually. So we're a fintech that's established to provide technology that makes hedging accessible and affordable, which is quite a niche corner of the embedded finance or even generally financial services market. So we pride ourselves on solving complex problems with technology. We've had incredible growth in the business the last few years with a team spread across the UK and Europe. Yeah, I look forward to this discussion today.
Excellent. Cool. And then lastly, maybe just a few words about myself. I'm Alex and I lead the strategy consulting business at Aperture. Our mission is threefold. Firstly, we help embedded finance providers like Prit and Florent market to embedders, i.e. the brands, the platforms, the marketplaces that embed their services. Secondly, we support embedders to actually choose providers, integrate a financial service and launch it successfully to their SMEs or consumer client base. Lastly, what we also do is we support embedders in taking this to market. And this is one of the contexts in which we really engage a lot with the SMEs that we are talking about today. And I want to maybe kick us off with a bit of an introduction on that side and maybe the spark also that led to this cooperation of writing this paper and launching this panel. I think what we can really see in the market is the SMEs still being underserved by the traditional banking infrastructure. What do we mean with that? We firstly mean that the service levels and cost are not at the space where SMEs are really reaping the full benefits of the offering potential that the financial service industry has. And then we also believe that there's a completely uncaptured SME demand in the market. We see cost on the SME side, risks being taken by SMEs that I think we can actually already from the financial services industry avoid with specific financial services that we can offer in an embedded or in a standalone way. Why is that the case? I think roughly we all know the distribution challenge. How do you really reach a company with 2 million in revenue? Yeah, that's very busy managing directors, not super financially savvy. So it's a hard case to sell them customized products. Second one is an operational one, and I just want to tell a quick story of an SME that I helped refinance their debt 2 weeks ago. It's an absurd story from my point of view. I consulted 2 businesses. One is a very traditional one, and one is a startup. It's profitable. It's thriving in e-commerce. Both needed new debt financing. We went out. We went to 3-4 regional banks. And just a quick question that you can ask yourself: do you want a traditional business that needs financing because it has a slump in sales this year, or do you want to finance the growth of a profitable startup that just needs to finance their inventory to grow even further in a profitable way? I think my answer is clear. The answer of the regional banks in Germany was also clear. We want the traditional struggling business because we are reading their annual reports and not their Shopify account, in which you can already see that the company grew 2x over the last year. It's an operational problem. It's a cultural problem, I think, in this way. The result of the matter is the thriving startup paid double the interest rate, paid the loan back before it was due, and the Fintech took all of that profit. The traditional bank financed the traditional business. The business went bust. It was a complete loss. And this sounds really like a marketing case. And I swear to you, this was 3 weeks ago, the conversations I had with the banks and the startups. So it is very real, the underserved market. And we, together with Swan, surveyed 1,200 SMEs to really shed a bit more light on this. I actually introduced now the lending challenge a little bit, and I want to now pass it over to Florent first. In your field of expertise for the financial products you are seeing, where are banks failing SMEs at the moment?
Yeah, I will make it very, very concrete. We tend to distinguish physical person from moral person. But actually, the people who build the company are the ones who, in their daily life, will use a mobile banking application, will be the user of N26, Revolut, and their likes. And actually, when you switch to the entrepreneurial world, to the business world, you will have the exact same expectations. If you have had a very good experience on your mobile app, on your banking app, you will expect the same to happen with your business. And I think served correctly in a digital manner with fluid experience, this is where people will, where you will find stickiness. And I think that banks are only starting to catch up on the big business, which was once individuals, and they are not necessarily the best at serving SMBs today.
Maybe before we move on to getting the same view from Florent, did this change in the last years? Didn't technology, everything we have in the infrastructure that banks can use in the whole neo-banking sphere, didn't it improve at all for SMBs?
So I think it obviously evolved, but I think it's quite hard because you have to, such banks, if we speak about the most traditional banks, they have all their legacy to carry with them. And I will give a very example because we also discuss with such financial institutions. And they today come at us because they will want some modern card issuing solutions compatible with Google Pay, Apple Pay. And they start by explaining us it's super hard for us to provide this because we have a physical first mindset. We start by printing the card, sending it to the customer, and then only this will be digitalized. While the expectation today is quite the opposite. I want to receive my card readily, to readily use it, to put it on my mobile phone, and so forth. So once you make this observation, yes, banks will evolve, and I think they will keep improving themselves. But it's also that they carry this legacy, and it's hard to keep innovating while you have to maintain this.
Mm-hmm. And Britt, from your view, if you want to say, where are banks failing SMEs? How is that shown in the SMEs that you interact with?
Yeah, so I mean, it's such a common conversation for us within our field to see the banks failing in kind of 3 main areas. So it's, they're still failing to provide access to these products to SMEs. They're really unable to simplify what is regarded as a complex end of the product spectrum. And that's with the technology they've brought into. And really, they haven't achieved operational leverage through, upgrades in technology that they've done internally to drive the cost down. Because the point you made earlier, an SME with 2 million in business isn't a huge wallet share. And we've got this organizational kind of cultural upsizing in every bank going on. And that you keep upsizing, you deny access to those SMEs. To maybe preempt the second part of your question, which you asked Florent as well, like my own observations of how things have maybe not changed over the last few years. I mean, it's really interesting as you read the report that you guys have put together about how the neobanks are kind of failing to address this, because I think it's not a conversation we often make enough of. We see the same in our specific field with incumbent fintechs, as I call them, not necessarily neobanks. I mean, they've still failed to address some of these problems, and we think that's a mix of not having operational leverage in the business. They haven't really. There's an army of salespeople, there's an army of operational staff supporting them. Does that business really look and feel, once you scratch below the surface, very different from the bank that they're competing with? So yeah, I mean, I think there's been good progress, but not at the pace we believe the technology can offer.
Yeah. Okay. So one part of the problem I understand is that banks are just slow at realizing the operational leverage that we are already realizing at a digital first approach, and therefore they have to upsize. And our SMEs that we're discussing today are just kind of the ones left behind that are not economic to serve. Is that correct?
Yeah, for me that completely makes sense.
Yeah. And then what else makes it hard for banks to really catch up in this way? It's always, I think, easy to say, oh, it's a legacy business, it's a cultural kind of mindset there. What specifically, Florent, if we look at the products that you are most concerned with, what's really hard for banks to overcome here?
Well, I think it's hard because it's complex, and people don't realize it. But we, for instance, focused heavily on the onboarding part, which is one of the most critical part. How do you make sure that in a matter of a few hours, someone goes through a complete onboarding, uploads their papers, gets validated, can then proceed with their first payments. And just to do what I've just said in a few seconds, it's months of work because you need the right product, you need the right ops people who will validate the documents, you need to localize this sometimes as well, and then you need and that's the overarching thing. On top of it, you need compliance to be on top of things because you don't want to onboard fraudsters or money launderers. And so it's hard, and our job is to make it super simple or as simple as possible to abstract all these layers of complexity. And that's, I think that would be my advice. Go look for a solution that makes it super easy and that will have carried all the weight of compliance, financial regulation, the tech, obviously, and all the financial partnerships.
Mm-hmm. All right. And that will make it more accessible for SMEs on the banking side?
Yeah, I think so. I decided to angle my answer with this onboarding approach because once again, that's quite a critical step. We really observe that once the account is onboarded, then you start to be more in the real life, and the churn would come more from a natural churn because such companies are dying or a freelancer is stopping their activity. And I think throughout this entire panel, we'll cover other aspects of maybe the user experience where things have been hard and we solve them. Maybe to just Pritesh said one very interesting thing on neobanks not being necessarily able to. I think they've made a huge work in digitalizing what traditional banks were doing. Yet, and I think we'll get to this a bit later on in the panel, it doesn't mean that they serve perfectly well some of their customers who have specific need on a given vertical. And that's also something that's hard to deliver because you cannot be, you can not serve the entire crowd and in the same movement be very, very niche, very verticalized, very specialized and serve some very specific needs.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, I love that as a later point. I think verticalization of the financial services. definitely let's do that. We can't hold that point back much longer, I think. Could you please give us a bit of an intro of what the services are that you each cover? Maybe, Prit, you can kick us off here. And just as a quick warning, when I met Prit the first time and he explained the service to me, I always have to ask Prit, explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old, so I actually understand FX hedging for SMEs correctly.
That's our goal here anyway, to get that right, Alex. So so I mean, if you talk specifically about hedging and what it means to an SME, it's the service of allowing that customer to transfer risk out of the business, right? So if you're busy selling widgets internationally, you should be able to understand that there is a currency risk to that transaction, and that currency risk can be taken out of your business through various products. The biggest difficulty that we see the companies facing around this is that the lack of technology that's penetrated this. I mean, you could walk into, say a really big Fintech conference. There will be one person exhibiting about embedded hedging or hedging like us. There will be hundreds of payments companies. So the harder end of the market is definitely significantly harder to understand and also to simplify, to be honest with you. We've had to swallow a little bit of a whale in terms of investment in architecture and, not fun front end, sexy looking stuff, kind of boring infrastructure to make it as low touch as possible in order to allow us to offer those services.
Can you share, I think we want to focus for as long as possible on the SME and their concrete needs today. Can you share a bit of an anecdote of what sparked, I think, all 21's vision to really say hedging for the SME?
Yeah, I mean, the kind of vision for the business comes in two parts. So there's kind of the vision of why we have focused so heavily on technology, and there's a really strong story that always kind of stuck with me for the last sort of decade. There's a very big firm within foreign exchange called XTX Markets. So back in 2015, this firm didn't exist. They are now the largest market maker within foreign exchange. So they came into the sharpest end of competing with the most sophisticated institutions, and they did this by using technology to codify the entire process. The CEO was the largest taxpayer in the UK last year. They've dominated the market. And what struck me when I met the COO was that he told me 2 people ran their entire operations department. There's hundreds of counterparties, multiple prime brokers. And what struck me was, why is this technology not being applied? I guess being applied in a really good context there and built a phenomenal company. Why is that same technology and that same kind of vision of what can be done with technology being applied to service small businesses? And we see this every day. So small businesses do not have access to the underlying technology that powers this. So for me, that story really inspired us to go and build this company and take care of the needs for the SME. And we see it every day in what we do. I mean, we're able to give people access at, less than 1/10 of where our competitors do. And that's an amazing proof point in conversations you have every day.
Okay, so that's the opportunity, tech enablement and the operations. Where's the pain for the SME and FX hedging?
It's definitely in terms of education. I think that first hurdle is one of the tricky ones. So educating, understanding, it's a point you said, you have to talk to people in a really simplified way to understand what hedging is. And that's probably the biggest hurdle to overcome. Once you get past that, you're able to service the SME well if you have a good business and a good technology platform that could deliver that.
Very cool. And I think you're taking out then the benefit is one of the major benefits you have is the cost advantages versus the traditional banks, which I think our paper clearly shows is still the major concern of SMEs when they look at their banking offering. Florent, over to you. The services you offer and an anecdote of why you are focusing on those for SMEs.
Yep. So I don't want to hammer this message too heavily, but we have this customer in Netherlands called Tello, which reported, like, because you could think that onboarding an account might be only a problem at a local level in a given country. For instance, in France, it's actually the case a bit everywhere in Europe. And they came at us with this exact need of saying, hey, it takes today days, if not weeks, for an entrepreneur to create his bank account in Netherlands, and we need this to accelerate. So we have built something with Stelo where it can be done in a matter of one day, once again, if not less. I think that's quite at the center of what we've approached. Then, like, to maybe switch to the verticalization of this market, and by verticalization, I mean some specific need on a market that is not the entire market. You have specific needs. For instance, if you're a freelancer, you have access to this all-in-one solution that will do everything. By the way, for the paper that we did with you, we partnered with Indie, which is a French solution, all-in-one solution for freelancers. And until recently, they were providing everything a freelancer needed to operate. Invoice management, VAT declaration, automation of accounting, all these topics. And actually, quite naturally, freelancers started to express the need of having banking features embedded within this product. Why? Because it's just so simple. Once you handle your once you have access to the bank accounts, the payments, then you can automatically reconcile. You can automate plenty of things. It's just more natural and much needed, very asked. Having said this, you have on the one hand customers, freelancers who ask for something. Yet it's still a bit of a niche market. You have even more niche market than the freelancer market. Okay, so you're indie and you want to build something that makes sense for your customers, yet you don't have the financial power to do it because you cannot rebuild another Swan. You cannot connect to all these financial partners. Like a compliance department is a big thing to handle. So it's very complex and it's hard, and you don't want to do it. And I think this is what we really try to solve. To your question, what we try to solve is to allow any company who feels the need to embed banking features into their product to make it. We make it possible for them. And with us, it's less of a big project because we have pre-built everything, and you just then reuse and consume our APIs.
All right. Thank you very much. I think I want to go into reconciliation later as well, because it's always one of the things where I believe that bank accounts can really, embedded bank accounts can really shine. And I think it's a pain that only SMEs know. And I think we here from the Fintech side and then platform side don't often see this problem because we are not the ones sitting there on a Sunday afternoon booking invoices, yeah, that should be automatically reconciled because they are all in one accounting and banking system. I think everybody knows the overall message of embedded finance, at least from the Fintech world here, but I want to reiterate it again. So I think the number one thing you hear is if you take a financial service and embed that into a solution that is from a non-financial institution, there is a distribution or marketing advantage because we understand more about the captive audience, we call it, the users of the non-financial institution, the customers of the non-financial institution. We can offer them financial service products at the point of need. That is, for me, that is always a marketing advantage, which also translates to a UX benefit because you're not getting spammed by your bank, but you're getting the right product at the right time. Number two, I think, is that we have more customized and more efficient products. Yeah, if we know from the accounting systems some data on the SMEs, we can offer them exactly the product they need for a better rate because we understand the SME better. And lastly, I always feel like there's a conversion impact. Yeah, better UX for us financially means better conversion in this way, in a lot of sense. And I think better UX also means a time saving for the SME. Yeah, I think these benefits are genius in theory. I always think, and they are super hard to quantify, right? And LinkedIn posts throw around a lot of impact that's monetary or hours saved or so on. Maybe, Prit, can you give me an example of, as an SME with a foreign exchange exposure? Yeah. So let's pretend I'm sitting, our classic example is I'm sitting in the UK, I build houses, but I need to order the proper windows from Germany, right? But I'm only getting paid later. So I have a pound to euro risk in my business. And if I'm a small SME, that might actually be make or break for my business. Can you give me a bit of an insight on the monetary impact, the cost savings you create, the risk you take off the table for me as an SME?
Yeah, absolutely. So like if you're, let's take your example of you're the SME CFO on a Sunday night in your accounting software, looking at your revenue and seeing your non-home currency exposures. You're a UK company. If we can embed our services into that point where you're doing that analysis, and we know the revenue that you have and the exposure in a non-currency risk, and we can give you a product that allows you to take that risk out of your business and give it to you right where you need it. So within that ecosystem, we're making a very real difference to that profit margin. I mean, if we say the contract has a 5% profit margin and the foreign currency risk or the volatility over the last year has been 10%, you're actually potentially going into negative net worth on that deal. And I think people don't notice this until the accounting package shows the impact of that FX volatility. It's kind of like, for us, it's like buying home insurance when your house is on fire. It's too late. So you have to look at hedging as like the thing you do beforehand. You never want to turn up when things go wrong. So it has to become part of your everyday. And so by embedding it right when you see those exposures forming, we have a really powerful product that empowers you to make better decisions from an SME's point of view. And I think that's the key. If you
100%. I think for me, this is really interesting, right? Because it's super hard to explain before the risk hits you. So it's really hard to flag, but with the accounting data accessible to all 21, you can flag the risk. So thanks for outlining how embedded is better here than actually standalone. And Florent, same question to you, right? Why is embedded better for your products than standalone?
For the
SME, I'm here, I'm fighting for the SME. So this perspective first, and we can move to the embedders after.
Yep. I think it just makes more sense to have everything in one place. When it comes then to maybe the financial impact, we have this B2B model, like we serve partners who themselves serve their end customers. So we tend to leave it to the partners. Some of them, by the way, will decide to recharge our fees to their end customers. Some will decide not to do it and to bake it into the other subscription SaaS fees that they already charge. So we have a bit more of a remote impact there, or it's not outside of our control. We tend to focus much more, I guess, on the user experience, having smart, strong customer authentication, some not clunky experience to validate payments and so forth. And I think we would more facilitate the life and make it easier for these SMBs. And that's the direct impact that we try to have, really.
Yeah, that's really great. I think in our study, we found that one of the biggest problems is that admin tasks and non-crucial tasks for SMEs swallow their whole time and they can't improve the business. So if you want to pinpoint a few of these UX advantages, go ahead.
Yeah. There again, I'll try to be as concrete as possible, taking the example of a company that we serve called Agicap. So Agicap, it's a treasury management software. And they came at us telling us, okay, today I can recommend plenty of things to my customers. I can tell them how to optimize their treasury, yet they still have to go to their banking account, to their bank interfaces to execute what I told them to do. to optimize their payment. And there on their bank interface, sometimes they had to do, if the recommendation of AgiCap was, hey, execute 30 payments now, they would have to do 30 separate payment operations, payment transaction, each with an SCA. So it's quite a broken experience. What we provided them, and it's very, very concrete what I explained here. It's you have behind the scene what we call a pivot account. It's a Swan AgiCap account. So once again, white label fashion, people will perceive it as an AgiCap account, and people can just stay on the same screen, on AgiCap screen. They click on one button and they say, okay, I would like to authorize for the payment of this 30 invoice, and this invoice will be paid in 30 days, this other invoice in 15 days, and this third invoice in 10 days. And I will also try to capture other payments this way. I click on a button and everything is done. So you stay on your interface. You don't lose time connecting to 1, 2, 3 banks that you have. Everything is concentrated on one interface. You just one time and automated everything. So for me, it's one of the best examples that we have. It's very concrete, and the banking part, the payment workflow are being operated where they should be operated, where it makes the most sense.
Yeah, I love that example. Maybe it's a bit much, but the statement from Sam Altman who says there will be a $1 billion company run by a single person. And my first thought was that person hasn't seen the German tax system yet, because the admin task will actually be too much to actually get there. But so I love these examples, and I think everybody who's tried to hire even accountants in Germany or somebody internally to take care of these things, every, I think, business owner knows the pain of doing these individual processes, yeah, and they are super willing to invest in automating them. I think this is quite important for me to stress. And even when we talk to, the 3 people construction company, they want to streamline their entire accounting and admin parts because they have 0 people for this. They do this themselves. So I quite agree. It's very inspiring for me. I think let's move to the embedders side, right? What we highlighted here is there's an actual problem for the SME. Yeah, we have solutions, for example, from Swan and Al21. If we move to the embedder side, what are you providing them as a starting point, yeah, to become a financial service embedder and service their SMEs better?
Who goes first? Pritesh, okay, I go first. Thank you. It's too kind. I'll go back to our founder's vision, which was to build a SaaS, and any developer could, in the middle of the night, connect to our website and start building. And from there, have direct access and free access to a sandbox. No need to sit through a demo. No need to pay upfront any setup fee. And literally the day after, you can go to your coffee shop and pay with the card that you have self-issued, that you have issued on Swan's interface. That was the vision. And that's what we built to make it possible. Everything is public. I said it a bit already, but the documentation is public. The pricing is public. The sandbox is public. We have also done we open sourced our interfaces. So when you build a banking app, you need a web banking, you need onboarding pages. We offer what we call a no-code solution for this, and we have provided this in an open source way so that these embedders, as you call them, can accelerate in the building of what they do. So that's about it. How can we build something super simple, super accessible, very open, that accelerates the speed to build? And some people will need to first build an MVP, a POC, a POC, and then accelerate. This is also possible with Swan.
And to what implementation timeframe does this get me? For me, to be honest, every time we talk to, I say, SaaS platforms, they show me the product roadmap and say, Alex, I don't have room. But I say, you will be surprised at how little room you need to actually bring the first service to life. Tell me, Florent. Time is always what the IT teams want.
And that's actually one of the number one questions that our prospects ask when we meet them. How long will it take? It's quite hard to answer because it will depend on a number of aspects, how how deep do you want your user experience to be embedded? How much do you care about white labeling everything? What I can tell you, we have examples here in Spain. I live in Spain. There is a company called IESA. It's a major homeowner association. So it's really like one of the largest firms here when it comes to homeowner association in Spain. And they have launched their first version in a matter of 1 month. So it was really super short. And then on top of it, they start building and they keep building what they've already done. Then I would say that the average project with Swan is closer to something between 3 and 4 months, and I think if you compare this to how much time you needed to build a bank 5 years ago, it's quite a stretch. If we only take Swan as an example, it took us 2 to 3 years to build the V1 of Swan, the connection to the SEPA networks, to MasterCard, to build once again all these financial partnerships. So it's quite complicated to build this. And if you compare once again, okay, these 2 years that Swan had to build this, and since then we keep iterating versus a matter of 3 to 4 months, I think it's quite a good deal.
100%. Yeah, I have to admit, I've done about 12, 15 embedded finance project where I was involved. 1 month is very ambitious for sure, and 4 months sounds right. This is what we see as well a lot. Just managing expectations across verticals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just to be very precise on this, I think you can also start with, once again, this MVP, and then you say, hey, okay, the onboarding pages, I can totally rely on Swan's onboarding pages and then move them on my own pages. So this is also how you accelerate. And once again, some people will decide to go live very fast. Some others will prefer to take a bit more time because also they have the resources. It might depend on the resources. How many developers and product people do you have? So that's a bit one of the explanation you can have.
100%, and maybe the 2 people that read my articles are in this call, but I wrote about this for payments, and one of the major predictions I personally have is that the PSP for platforms that provides an MVP solution and moves you seamlessly through those steps is the one who's gonna win most of the future embedded payments, the embedders. Because that's the way to go, I think. You start with an MVP and you develop into it, and every embedded financial service provider who can master this journey for a SaaS platform, for a marketplace, would be my first choice. Yeah. All right, Frit, over to you. If I want to become an FX, if I want to embed an FX hedging service into my accounting platform or another SaaS platform, what's the starting point I have with R21?
I think it starts with understanding. We have a very clear ROI that we can demonstrate the platforms, so they kind of can get over that hurdle and understand, because we've built this for ourselves. We've got a lot of clear case studies and benefits for their SME and integrated customers. But with us solving quite a complex part of the product spectrum, we tend to work well in a collaborative approach with the partner. So we tend to take away it works very similar to how Florent said. So you got the initial MVP, and the 4-month timeline is realistic. You get the approach, but in reality, a slightly slower execution adoption is smart, because you get this right, and we do it in a very seamless way. Everything has been made simple, as Florent said. That's the key, and the key is that initial few steps that you take people through. So we work with very few but limited strategic partners in this way. To make sure that we get it right, we get it simple. But the way that we've designed things are there to bring this as quick to market as you can. I mean, we've invested for the last 2 years heavily in infrastructure, as a lot of parallels between what Florent is saying. And for you to be able to launch these products in 3-4 months is, in our view, incredible.
Yeah. Talking about ROI, for both of you, I have a bit of an information advantage here, because I published a calculator for SaaS platforms where they can just type in their GMV and number of merchants, and then get a monetization impact estimate. Yeah, and I can disclose now that it was inspired by the knowledge that Swan has on accounts and cards. But Florent, can you explain to me how a SaaS platform can make money with embedding accounts and cards?
Yeah. So first, when you build something with Swan, I think your objective is to have a more compelling product, a better UX, more stickiness, less churn. So that's really the first line of answer is you build something more defensive, and just having less churn is a huge revenue uplift. Besides, there is a solid revenue opportunity building with Swan. Obviously, what everybody will think of is to increase their subscription fee. Once again, some people decide not to do it and prefer to include them in other offers that they provide. But I think the two main revenue streams that people might not be aware of are interchange and revenue from deposits. And we share both, or we are capable of sharing both, depending on some volume conditions, obviously. Interchange is actually what you get by card networks. When you do a transaction with a card that you have issued, you readily get some percentage of the transactions that will vary based on the type of card use, transaction details, and so forth. And that's quite a big revenue line for us and obviously for our partners, because we share this with them. The other revenue lines that we have and that we share with our partner is interest rates that we get from deposits. Quite a game changer. 3 years ago, rates were negative, and today we are Esther rate in Europe is close to 4%. And so there is quite some money to be made for business who have a lot of deposits. And this is also still something that we are able to share with our partners. Just one data point, one example, we have this company called Expensia, which is an expense management solution. And believe it or not, but they reported us that 6 months after having launched Swan, their customer lifetime value had tripled. Because of when you add all these revenue lines and you multiply by less churn, etc., that's the result you get to.
Yeah. For me, it's not hard to believe. I have never seen your commercial offer, so I can just in theory, for me, it feels a little bit like magic, right? So I'm I don't know, an accounting platform. I launch my own credit card that's called the Mix card. I give it to my customers, and every time they buy a nice client lunch, every time they buy gas, I make a little bit of money. For me, this is Anyways. Let's move on before I dream again of that. Prit, how does the business case work for all 21 embedders?
Yeah, so I guess there's some parallels there. So definitely we tend to find the most successful embedders are those that look for platform adoption over revenue first, but there is a revenue share element to how embedders earn per transaction. Much like the card transaction fee, there is a rev share that we have in place. But what I think creates a lot of stickiness for our partners is that a lot of these hedging contracts are 6 months, 12 months. And so you already have a captive audience who's looking at things about their business, adding value. They're able to put these contracts on. So they're going to be in that ecosystem for 6 or 12 months longer. So actually they find customers build a huge amount of loyalty by staying in, and that definitely impacts, the LTV of the customer and the drop-off rates have a significant impact when they embed our solutions there. So.
Fantastic. Before we move to the Q&A, I think I actually forgot to announce that we have 15 minutes of Q&A at the end of our session, but we do. Last comment from our two panelists before we do that is, I always feel like, especially last year, embedded finance, it didn't get the adoption that we all want. We feel like we're ready from the fintech side. We don't get quite the uptick. What's your major prediction for embedded finance 2024, 2025?
Bit.
Whoever wants to go first can go first.
Okay, I can go. No, wait. Okay, we believe, that's our belief at Swan. And actually, we are the front seat. We observe this. And I can tell you that embedded banking is no longer a buzzword. It actually works. We have numerous partners who provide this to today tens of thousands of customers who are active on their accounts. So it does work. And we have the strong belief that providing banking services will fall into the hands of tech companies. That's a major cultural shift. In the next decade, we expect actually that like big banks will no longer face a dozen of innovative neobanks. They will instead have to face tens of thousands of companies. Once again, maybe specialized on the need. You mentioned, by the way, a construction SaaS, helping people in the construction space. That's one of the companies that we serve. And it's once again this specific niche need that you need to serve very well that will embed banking features. and that banks will really struggle to compete with because the offer is so compelling and so well thought, so harmonized that it will be very complex. So for those of you who are still hesitating, I think it's a time. If you're running a SaaS, like a financial SaaS, an HR SaaS, like wherever you believe embedding banking features make sense, you should reach out.
Very good. Great.
Yeah, I think for us, we have I'd agree with a lot of what Florent said there. Completely aligned with him on much of what he said there. But one area that we can see some really interesting developments in the coming years are some of those areas that you touched on that haven't been looked at. So what's the impact of interest rates and how do the embedded finance products around that really develop? And that's I think is, we had this wake up call post-SERP where everyone said, well, interest rates go in another direction. And I don't think the products around that have developed. We're definitely looking at that as what are the complex products in this space and how do we address that? So I think there's many firms that will try and address even more complex products that have been out of sight, out of mind for the best part of the decade in the coming years.
Very cool. All right. With that, any questions towards the panelists or towards me as well from our attendees? Feel free. Actually, I think it's via the chat, right? Yes. And I just read them out if they come, when they come. First one is, how do you address SMEs versus enterprise companies? Is your messaging very different?
Yeah,
but you guys go ahead.
Yeah, I think you need to adapt your pitch, obviously. You don't serve them the same. So the short answer is that you message them differently. I assume that the question is tailored for like the end customers, not the partners, because we tend to focus on increasingly large partners, but themselves, many companies, HGAP, for instance, that I mentioned, the treasury management software, is focusing on larger companies. So obviously you have to adapt your pitch. You have to adapt your product as well. You have to be more reassuring. Some features, I can name one, but for instance, you would expect things such as EBIX to be provided to if you're a large company. So you have to improve your product to be able to serve such larger companies.
So I think one thing is, I just realized because I'm building go-to-market concepts for these, I should actually maybe give an opinion on this. The product-led growth definitely is one big thing. How do I make this simple enough, accessible enough for the SME? Is much more complicated than offering it to enterprise customers. The second part of the messaging, I think, is something that Prit mentioned is education. So I think what we always look at is making the need and the benefit super, super tangible in a much less abstract way. So it needs to be a typical part is for enterprise customers, you come with a calculator to calculate the ROI. For SMEs, I come with a number. Yeah. So I had one SME who said, "Ooh, that's one E-class more I can lease." Yeah. Which I love in the way of expressing the 50K savings I wanted to give the guy. All right. Second question is, what verticals do you think are taking the lead in embedding finance? So, Maxence, do you mean the embedder side, so the SaaS platforms and marketplaces in terms of which verticals, or which financial services? We are obviously, I think, happy to answer both questions, although I think Prit and Florent will be highly biased on which financial services they think will take the lead. Which companies? Okay, fantastic. Right, Florent, Prit, who do you see as the natural embedders at the moment? And who, because I feel like you both will say accounting and finance software, who will be in the second wave of embedders?
I have a clue. We're quite excited. But sorry, I don't tend to steal the mic. Huh? Okay, I go. But you have to think of like who in the value chain is very well positioned to deliver such services, and who is already connected to a number of people who might have the use of a card, of a bank account. I think like financial SaaS is the obvious candidate to this, and we all agree. I think that then there is a wave that's particularly interesting is everything around human resources softwares, because they have the data about the companies, about the employees, and they can then provide plenty of services of embedded services to their employees, benefit cards or like for salary in advance, for instance. So we see them as a pretty natural candidate as such HR softwares.
Anything to add, Brett? Anything we forgot here?
I mean, we're obviously seeing the big financial services SaaS and always as the kind of first time, but so beyond that kind of big behemoth, there's definitely some more entrants in that space. So we're having more conversations with newer firms within that sector, actually taking this on and seeing partnerships like this is very critical to creating that stickiness. For me, I guess B2B marketplaces for us are a really interesting place, and that's maybe lending more towards our product set. So we definitely see that as a vertical that we're seeing more firms take the lead in there, where they would just not really.
Interesting. Thank you, Maxence, for the question. Next question. Anything else from the audience? Good question so far, I think. All right. I think let's wait another minute on this one. So what I think is always quite interesting, and it comes to to kind of a similar question than our first one, and it's for you, Prit and Florent. How do embedders really make sure they have enough capacity and dedicated approach to taking this to market once they have done the embedding of the service? Maybe some best practices also from your customers.
That's a good one. Okay, I think there are like again, you can make some trade-offs. You can decide to be heavy on the user experience or to be totally fine with gray label interfaces. That's the first. Then I think what we observe is a prioritization of the most required features. You have to carefully listen to your customers. Example, do they care about having check to acquire payments, to collect payment, or would they rather care about card acquiring and SEPA direct debit to acquire such payments? So you have to prioritize this. We all face the same topic, actually, even us. What do we prioritize in our roadmap? And to make the best prioritization, the best is always the same, is to listen to your customers and say, okay, let's go for card acquiring to start with, because this is the main need. So I would try as much as possible. And I think it's very relevant for B2B companies. B2C companies, maybe you can impose to end customers that's this famous sentence of Ford. If you were to ask your customers what they would like to have, they would not answer you a car, but rather something with more horses to attract you. While I believe that in B2B businesses, if you don't listen very carefully to your customers, it won't work. So you have to listen to their needs and to answer them. So huge prioritization with a lot of product discovery is, I think, very critical. By the way, like that's one thing that we try to get better at, doing such discovery calls and finding what the concerns of end customers are together with our partners as a way ourselves to prioritize things in our roadmap.
Yeah, I think this is actually a fantastic answer. We see this all the time from the Aperture perspective, is that because you have done this before at another embedder, you can take the learnings you have about the end users to the embedder and help them actually build and market a better product. Yeah. So I think this is a huge example of I would say, the unbundling that we're seeing in the market. All right. Any last comments from our two panelists before I do the goodbyes to all of our attendees? Very good. Then I thank you so much, Brit and Florent, for participating today in the panel, and so much to our attendees as well for participating. If there are any other questions on the matter, feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn or via emails. And we hope we inspired some thoughts today on how we can all become embedders for financial services to really create some value for SMEs. Thank you so much, and speak to you soon. Bye-bye.